Hello viewers, welcome to our program. Today we'll be talking about the effective management of globalization. And for this purpose, we are pleased to welcome in our studio Dr. Kartik Roy, Associate Professor at the University of Queensland, Australia. Well, Professor, welcome. Can you please tell us about your interpretation of globalization?
Well, globalization relates to the integration of all the economies in the world in regard to the free flow of trade in goods, in financial services, in migration of labor, in internet services, and in culture between the countries. This was the primary objective of globalization. The idea was, if there is no barriers to this free flow, then each individual country would be able to achieve greater growth and development outcomes, and also the intermix of the culture will not only improve the quality of life, but at the same time improve the overall standard of living of all countries around the world.
Okay, now you will agree with me, it is also very important to effectively manage globalization. How far do you agree?
I agree with you completely, because globalization is something over which, no matter whether a country accepts the globalization or not, it is there. So the best option for a country is embrace globalization and try to manage this globalization by modifying its existing resources and existing norms and institutions, so that each country can maximize its return or benefit from globalization. Therefore, management of globalization is the key to the success of each individual country.
Right. Now, Professor, tell us what type of institutional framework do we need for effective management of globalization?
Institutional framework, first of all, the international organization, the WTO, which is the manager which oversees the globalization process. WTO creates its own rules, and in many cases these individual WTO rules will come into conflict with the individual national rules imposed by the national governments in different countries. So what every country has to see is that they will benefit from the globalization provided they can alter or modify their existing rules and regulations. Institution primarily is norms and rules. There are some institutions which are informal, which are created by the society. There are other institutions which are created by the government, which has been created by the state. So it's primarily relates to the governance regime. Managing globalization means institution of governance will have to be improved. Here, by governance, most of the people think that the governance is just the government, political system. No. The term governance has a much wider connotation. Governance here refers to the economic governance, political governance, and social governance. So, institutions.
Could you elaborate on these three types of, yeah?
Yes. So, this society creates the state creates its institutions, state creates the political institution first, political institution creates economic institutions. So, economic institutions are the two types of institutions. One is open market, outward oriented institutions, and the other one is inward oriented institutions.
Okay.
So those governance institutions, that the state institution, government which is pro-market, which are outward oriented, which wants to achieve success under globalization, they will have to be more pro-market and more pro-outward-oriented, export-oriented regimes. So the domestic economic institutions such as rules and regulations, economic laws and rules and regulations, labor market rules, foreign investment rules, all those things will have to be modified so that the rest of the world therefore feel that yes, we can go to this country in confidence and can let this country achieve success. We also achieve success and let them achieve success. Similarly, without political governance, good political governance, you cannot get those economic institutions. If the government is very much interested in fulfilling their own desires, then they may adopt enormous restrictions, various types of inward-oriented policy, then that country will remain in that situation for a long, long time, whereas the rest of the world will pass by. Globalization will pass by. No, globalization will not care for an individual country. It is the country which has to care for globalization.
Okay. Now, some countries like China and East Asia have been able to effectively manage globalization. Now, can you tell us how this has been made possible?
Yes, these countries has been at the forefront of globalization right from the mid-80s or late 80s, when the word globalization just began to appear in the world market. So what they did, first of all consider, okay, if I go to another country, undertake investment, export goods, export smart ideas, what sort of things I will be looking for in that country? And that gave them the answer. For example, I want to invest in, say, China, and therefore I go there. I would definitely I'm spending my money, my resources, taking a big risk. Naturally, first thing is, I would not like to see the domestic government rules, economic rules prevent me to pursue my goals. I would like to see that the property, the land which is given to me to undertake investment is guaranteed. Nobody will come and take it away from me. I would like to see that the profit that I make I should be able to send it back to my home country or to another country after giving the due amount to the host country. I would like to see that the tax regime is low. These are the government economic rules, economic governance. If there is a high tax, I will go somewhere else. There are at any time 25 different countries would want one foreign investor to come in. So I have many choices. So why should I go to your country? Then I would like to see there is no interruption to production. Under globalization, production is a 24-hour job. Factories should be running 24 hours a day. There should be no stop. There would be no labor day, no flag hoisting on the streets, no strikes, nothing. Uninterrupted production, and which means flexible labor market, no wage restrictions. These are some of the fundamental requirements in terms of economic governance. And only East Asian governments, countries, they knew this is what has to do when they put in place all these institutions. Labor market institution is free, completely free labor market, no restrictions on the working hours, there is no minimum wage, tax system has been very low, extremely export oriented, and also profit, you repatriate profit. Fifth, China allowed the foreign investor for the first 15 to 20 years, no tax. You take it away. Because idea is, you bring your machines, you are not taking it away. Machine stays in my country. This becomes my property. So after 20 years, you can go. But by that time, I will learn the trick. Okay. And then we will manage ourselves. And that's what is going to happen. So only an effective governance, a strong political institutions dedicated to the goal of globalization and national growth can achieve that.
And do you think a sense of patriotism also contributes to that?
Tremendous sense of patriotism. The national leadership is very important. The leadership must be dedicated, only benevolent autocrat who has the goal to take the country to a very highest level and which can inspire the whole nation to the national goal. It can only happen in East Asian countries. Chinese societies are monolithic societies, and we, whether we are in Mauritius or India, our societies are not monolithic. We have different beliefs, different religions, different customs, different provinces. We can never, and different languages. That these are most fundamental requirements to unite the whole country together to achieve the same certain goal. They have been able to do that because of the social system, their culture, Confucian culture. Confucian culture glorifies wealth,
Okay.
whereas Hindu culture sacrifices wealth. You see this big difference in our culture, okay? Hinduism never propagated wealth accumulation because wealth was despised. If you go back to the Hindu roots, those people who were accumulating money, they were treated just like lower class people. They would not be talking to them. So this is why there has never been such a huge capital accumulation as the Chinese in Hindu society.
Okay. Now, like you said, some countries still lag behind. So why is it so?
This is because their governance institutions in economist has consistently advocated there has to be economic democracy first, political democracy comes later.
And what is the difference between the two, sir?
Because when you introduce political democracy in a developing country first, then you already created a people's choice, and only people's choice can be successful when there is enough, already some wealth already has been created in the country. Initially a poor country which has a small pie, you introduce democracy, instead of generating enough wealth so that you distribute, initially start to distribute, so wealth cannot grow in this situation. So therefore economic free enterprise, dynamism of free enterprise is important. Let the wealth grow, and when wealth grows there would be inequality initially. Laborers, if you claim, if a producer invest $100 and if the labor itself claims $90, it will never produce. Nothing will grow. This is why economy, let the economy grow first and then democracy. But Western countries consistently they have imposed political democracy on the developing countries. There is a trick here, because no political democracy in the Western country has ever been able to achieve more than 5% growth.
Okay.
So their growth always would be low, because the trick to their success has been they maintained low population. So even with a economists call it neutral growth, even if a country does not do very much, it will still achieve 3.5% growth. Western countries are doing just that because they have maintained a low population, all infrastructure, that's enough for them to sustain. But developing countries need 8 to 10% growth, high growth, to pick the level above certain level, and therefore you need not political democracy immediately, benevolent autocracy or benevolent democracy, one party rule, two party rule at the most, okay? Then you can achieve some. But in any case, because the Chinese societies are monolithic because of their culture, and they always has been a benevolent autocrat dedicated to the national goal. And the other factor is geography. For example, Mauritius has been surrounded by ocean.
Yeah.
It has a history of trade because it has nowhere else to go. So therefore, Mauritius has a much bigger chance to be able to success. Its geographical boundary is surrounded. This is a trade route. So it is natural for it to trade. Whereas in the case of India, look at the India. It's a giant country. Only western part of India, southern part of India, these are the main international trade routes for thousands and thousands of years. So trade brings in goods, but interaction of culture, this is vital. When the people have to absorb other ideas, globalization, people's culture has to change. Globalization cannot succeed without interaction of the culture, and trade brings in a change in goods and services and culture. So that's why you will see southern part of India, right from Gujarat, Bombay, Karnataka, Madras, and this area, these are trade oriented. So no matter what politics, people are doing their businesses and generating wealth. Whereas eastern India, northern India, no, primarily agriculture oriented, inward, nothing, economy is not growing. And China, 4,000 years, although it's a landlocked country, only one sea route, That's the Pacific. That's the other route. And it has been trading for the last 200 years, 2000 years.
Okay. So what can be done in these countries to better manage globalization?
These countries' domestic rules and regulations will have to change. They have to make them outward oriented. They will have to reduce their level of tariffs. But at the same time, they also have to make people aware of these things. It is no good telling about the poverty. Globalization has been reducing poverty throughout the world, everywhere. Why it cannot do that? If we make our domestic institutions proactive, if we dismantle some of the restrictions on labor market, which is vital, if the government can remove the labor laws and make it more proactive, and if also government targets the growth benefits to poorer sections of the community, then everybody benefits. Poverty is reduced, and also population growth control is vital. If they do this sort of thing, and a very liberal tax regime, so that investors are willing to come and invest. You need foreign investment. Foreign investment brings in technology. Without foreign advanced technology, you need technological upgradation, and you can't achieve that one.
Okay. Now, up to now, there has been no comprehensive management mechanism as far as globalization is concerned. Could you please elaborate on this?
Comprehensive management mechanism will have to be these 5-6 different areas. First of all, a country, its trade policies will have to change. Globalization is about trade. Trade in goods, trade in services, trade in financial services. Most of the developing countries still do not allow free flow of financial services. Their insurance sector, banking sector, foreign investment, these are highly controlled and restricted. So other countries don't want to come. Okay. And then they also have to remove restrictions on the labor. They also have to invest significant amount of, not just investment, effective implementation of the education policy, technology oriented education. And this is where East Asian countries are far ahead of everybody else. Right from primary school, every child in Taiwan has a technology course. They are doing this for the last 30 to 40 years. And in India, even at the university level, they don't have a computer. So most of their knowledges are reading books, no actual applicability. High quality human resource, high technology, removal of restrictions on production, removal of tariff, not completely, but some restrictions would have to be maintained on imports, but significant amount of tariffs will have to be reduced. And to be able to be successful, you have to produce at the cheapest cost high quality. And to do that, labor market restrictions must be removed. So if you do all those things,
okay. Now, it is a fact that sometimes developed countries tend to create barriers in the trade of developing countries. So how far do you agree, sir?
I agree with this 100%. Developed countries, you look at that. Developed countries have always differential attitude to different countries. When United States first went to China, this is during Richard Nixon's time. Henry Kissinger was his Secretary of State. Kissinger is a political scientist, doesn't know anything about economics. He knew nothing. But their primary objective of United States going into China and bringing China into the world body, primary objective was so that America could sell goods. American companies will go and sell huge amount of money, goods to Chinese, such a huge population, and then they will be able to return. In 2003, so after all these years, 2003, a professor from University of California in Berkeley went on a fact-finding mission to find out what has been happening in China. As soon as Richard Nixon opened up, America introduced Most Favored Nations Agreement with China, MFN. Under that, China could export goods to United States and EU followed that at a very marginal, almost nominal tariff, whereas goods being exported from India, heavy duty, exported from other developing countries, heavy. because their idea was once they open up to China, they do not need any other country. Okay, they can sell more. Then in 2003, this professor came back. Then he went to China, and first he went to the California container terminal. That's the largest container terminal in the world. So he asked the head of that terminal, because he has the statistics of imports coming in and going. In 2003, America, he said, how much amount of goods United States is importing from China? 2.26 billion or 30 billion. Then he says, okay, this is what Richard Nixon said when Kissinger brought us to China so that we can sell more. Okay, how much we are selling? 3 billion. So 230 and 3, look what China has done. Under MFN agreement, China has virtually almost captured. And today, America has a balance of trade deficit with China over $500 billion.
Okay.
So why? So if that happens, they are doing one thing to one country, and now all American businesses and EU businesses are in China. They are producing and they are exporting the goods to their home country at a price which is much higher than their cost of production. American businesses are keeping this money. They are not sending the money to the home country. They are sending the money to their overseas other areas. So they are the ones who are actually destroying America. And today they are talking about managing. When other developing countries are sending their goods to United States and EU, they impose domestic requirement, or the goods will have to be procured, raw materials will have to be procured from the own country. So if you export, say, spices from Mauritius, raw spices from Mauritius to EU, then it's got a very low duty. But as soon as you grind them here, it becomes processed. The duty rate goes up to a very, very high level, 40%, 45% duty.
Okay.
So this is unfair. It's the same thing, just they are grinding it. Same thing with the tea, Indian tea. Enormous restriction on Indian tea. They have to prove that this tea has been produced in India for the last 35 years.
Okay.
Impossible. This is there. You come and see.
Yeah.
Okay. So this kind of restriction they impose on the Indian goods and Chinese goods because, or say goods from Mauritius or other countries, because they are not exporting that much. Okay. But China has virtually all investors, all exporters to EU and America. They are all American and EU people, EU companies. So therefore, the same restriction does not apply to the exports from China. So this is why there is a differential thing, and therefore developed countries have much to blame.
So what advice would you give to the Mauritian government as far as the effective management of globalization is concerned?
Globalization is not a evil monster that many people has made it out to be. It is a giant. So when you face a giant, a single pygmy cannot do anything. Okay. So it has to join. It has to form a group. It can be the most effective way to deal with this globalization would be at the international forum, at all negotiations. There should be an Indian Ocean Rim Forum that includes Mauritius, India, Middle East, right up to Singapore, Thailand. They are all part, and Indonesia. They are all part of the Indian Ocean, including Malaysia, and that's a big giant group. Okay. So that incorporate the giant of South Asia, India. It will incorporate all the ASEAN countries and Mauritius and East Asia. It will be a big Indian Ocean Rim group. If they do, then they can put pressure and then they would listen. Otherwise, WTO is not going to listen to any country, individual country.
Well, thank you very much, Professor. It's been an honor to have you here. Well, dear viewers, we've reached to the end of our today's program. Thank you for watching and goodbye.